Hello.
There we go. Hello, everyone.
Before I start, maybe some housekeeping rules. Let's try, unless you have a question, and please shoot questions as we go, but try to keep your mic on mute, just so we can get the messaging across and you can hear us properly. I want to thank you all for making time for the session. I know everyone's really busy these days, and you've gone out of your way to attend this, and I hope that we can provide some information about the Power Platform and kind of educate you in how we approach this challenge, and we'll really kick right into it. So, why just lose Power Platform data? And we're losing data on purpose, so you don't have to. And for those that have invested in a solution before, you might know that you might want to test how you do the data recovery of that solution, for that solution. And I guess we're doing this in a safe space today. You don't have to worry about something happening, and we're kind of doing that for you, right? So Victor and I are going to run through how to restore data for the platform, and you don't have to worry about doing something to your production environment that might cause some issues or maybe some stress that you don't need, right? So firstly, who am I and who's speaking to you? Thomas Jamin. I've been with AvePoint coming up 8 years, and I'm the EPG team lead, so I lead the enterprise team here at AvePoint across ANZ, and I'm the New Zealand territory manager. And I'm based out of Sydney, Australia. For those Kiwis on the call, I'm originally a Kiwi. I grew up in Wellington, New Zealand, but I jumped the ditch. Don't hate me for that. Maybe about 9 years ago. And Victor, I'll hand that off to you for your introduction.
No, thanks, Tom. So as you can see, my name is Victor Lathia. I'm pretty close to Tom, where I'm about 7 years here at AvePoint. I've been as a solution engineer for quite some time, and then jumped over to becoming a technical account manager. So where I have my own patch of customers there that I'll help kind of preach and manage from that standpoint. But now, helping kind of align that messaging around what we're doing around the Power Platform to the wider audience today.
Okay. Thank you, Victor. So let's talk about the agenda and what we're going to cover today, and hopefully by the end of this session, you have a full understanding of why we're protecting the Power Platform. So why the Power Platform? And then Victor's going to go through some data protection scenarios of if something or XYZ were to happen, this is a process that you can follow. And of course, we're going to have some Q&A at the end, but if you've got a question, please unmute yourself, ask as we go. If you feel uncomfortable doing so, you can also type the question into the chat, and we'll get to that question as soon as we see it. Right? So for the review, let's kick off. Why we're here, the Power Platform. Microsoft's pushing it, we're adopting it, we're starting to see more adoption of the solution. And for those that aren't aware of why you would use something like that, I've got some scenarios of relevant for me, right? So Thomas Jamin, enterprise team lead. Why do I use the Power Platform? How do I use the Power Platform? And when I'm talking to different customers, or if they're already a customer, I need to know, are they adopting the solution, right? So I've got a dashboard within Power BI that tells me the different information about our customers, and also the sales process for those customers, where they are, so I can track them and have insights into that data that isn't really findable anywhere else. So it gives me an idea of where everything is, what my next steps are, and what to go about it. For example, I can see the maturity of conversation, so where I am with each customer with our conversation. If they need customer support, who's asked for customer support and why, and how much they've adopted the solution, right? So I'm getting insights into that data. So next time I talk to customer A or customer B, I'll come in more educated and be able to help them a little bit better, right? So that's an example for me. But there's some challenges with that. When we turn into, or when we flip it over to, challenges we're hearing from our customers of that platform, right? So Power BI, or what are we hearing, right? For example, when it comes to Power Apps and Power Automate, so we have Power BI, and then we have Power Apps and Power Automate, all part of the Power Platform, right? Three main components. And citizen developers are being pushed to create these applications within, Power Apps and Power Automate. And I was thinking, what is a citizen developer? I haven't really heard that terminology before Power Automate became more of a thing, if that makes sense. So I looked it up, and a citizen developer is an employee who creates application capabilities for consumption by themselves or for others using tools that are not actively forbidden by IT. And it's not a persona, it is a persona. It's not a title or targeted role. So what that means is, as we adopt Microsoft 365 and we provide this tooling to our end users, if they develop, an application and they provide it to their team members, they're a citizen developer. But there's some challenges with that. So if we look at, I'm a citizen developer and I have created an application that all my colleagues are using, right? It's really cutting down the time of a certain task. But I have pushed out a change to that application because I wanted to make it more mature or better. And unfortunately, we've had some issues with that. And with the Power Platform, we don't have a way to go back to a previous version, right? And you might have seen this before. In SharePoint, we have the version history, right? So the document gets updated, it might go to 1.1 to 1.2. If it's a major version, it might go to version 2. We don't have that with the Power Platform, right? It's just the version was just the major version. So I've got to put X on that. And then just to show you some of the limitations of the platform when it comes to recovering the data, right? If something were to happen. And then further, so we've got Power Apps, Power Automate on the left, and then on the right-hand side, the Power BI workspaces. What happens when someone accidentally deletes a Power BI dashboard, right? And changes are made all the time, and something would happen to that, and you can just see that we can't get back past versions or recover past versions, right? It's like a recycle bin. There is no type of recycle bin for the platform either. So this is the SharePoint recycle bin. Just to show you an example of what that may look like. And so I've got an X to that too. So you can start to see some of the limitations of the platform where there is just really the major version, right? And no way to go back to a previous version just because we have the one version. And then there is no way to recover if something were to happen, right? So, and actually lastly, if decisions are being made within the platform, that's technically a record. And for those of you working in public sector, you may need to adhere I guess you have to adhere to a Public Records Act. And there's no way of actually doing that currently, right? No way to achieve that with the platform. And for those that think maybe that doesn't apply to you, not my location, I looked it up, and pretty much everywhere has a Public Records Act you need to abide by if you're in a certain location, right? And I apologize.
Good morning.
And I
Another
apologize.
parcel in for you.
We've got there we go. Cool, thank you. We've got, and I apologize for the locations like WA, Northern Territory, Tasmania that didn't make this list. I ran out of space on the slide. But moving on. So there's some holes in the recovery of data when it comes to the platform, right? And what does AvePoint provide, or what type of solution do we provide to recover that data? What type of backup and recovery solution do we have? And we have a cloud backup platform that supports a range of different solutions, right? And it's all modularized, so you don't have to buy the platform in general and pay for Salesforce backup when you only really need Microsoft 365 backup, for example. And obviously today, and what Victor's going to go over, is the Power Platform. And part of the Power Platform, we have those three components: Power BI, Power Automate, and Power Apps, that are all supported by this solution, right? And it's worth mentioning that the solution is granular. So, if you think of an Exchange location, you've got your mailbox and folders and items within that mailbox, or that folder, sorry. And you can restore, any object level within that. For example, you might restore an item, restore a folder, or restore the mailbox. And same goes with SharePoint or Power BI, Power Automate, or Power Apps. All those different object levels, we can provide a process to get that data back. And Victor will go through some of those scenarios today on how you can, I guess, shield yourself from potential failure. So moving on, it's actually worth mentioning. We have that in the middle of the slide here. We have a PDF on how this platform helps support you for those that are trying to adhere to the Essential 8 requirements by the Australian Cybersecurity Centre. And for those in New Zealand, this also relates to you. I've actually got some customers that try to achieve or adhere to the standard as well. And if you'd like more information on that, I can provide you that to you, but I know that's not what this session is for. And just really quickly, this solution of ours, the cloud backup solution, right? It's all hosted on our Confidence platform. So if you know anything about us, we have this huge platform that has lots of security built in, and that's where it's hosted on Azure infrastructure. I just wanted to quickly call that out. Great. So the solution in general allows you to it has an impact on the business user. They can use Power BI or Power Automate and so on and so forth with no, I guess, impact as the solution works in the background to see when data is being created, right? And then takes a copy and puts it somewhere else, and then provides a process for you to get that data back, right? So the solution itself is going to back up the data within Power Platform 4 times a day, right? So there's 4 different recovery points during the day where you can bring that data back for every sort of recovery process, should I say. There's a bunch of reports and, I guess, delegated permissions and things of that nature that you'd expect from a enterprise recoveries solution, such as what we're providing here, that we do provide through the solution. And then additionally, you can bring your own security, right? So you've got your own authentication that you can bring with Azure AD. You can bring your own encryption keys, as well as your own data storage location if you wish. But there's a whole heap back that AvePoint can provide you all that as well, that we can talk to you through if you wish. So to really, I guess, put this and give a conclusion to what I wanted to cover, this is my last slide, and then you don't have to worry about me anymore, is AvePoint, what we're providing, I guess, is insurance policy if something were to happen, right? If something were to happen to the Power Platform, what's the risk to your business? And we are providing a solution, I guess, to get that back, because Microsoft currently doesn't have a process to get that back. So you don't have to have any losses or damage to the business or have any downtime to the end users. And we do that through an automated process of taking a copy of your data from the Power Platform and putting it or storing it in securely in another location, maybe Azure Blob Storage, for example. And then we can provide you with access to that data, so you can recover that, which Victor's going to really focus on with this walkthrough of our solution. So with that, I'll pass over to you, Victor.
Thanks, Tom. All right, so I guess we'll walk through, as we mentioned, a couple of scenarios, right? And we're talking like putting on our hats of that citizen developer, right? And so even though when we're talking about, in this instance, a developer, those citizen developers are just average Joes like myself and Tom, that, as we see, because of the Power Platform, the benefit is there's no heavy coding around it. So really anyone that has access to those Power Platforms can create something as fluid and automated as something like one of those dashboards that we'll see in a little bit, and also just some of the workflows that we'll look into as well. But with that, right, with that great, I think one of the famous quotes with the great responsibility, or great power comes great responsibility around that as well. So we want to make sure there's metrics behind it to make sure there's a bit of a safety net, that insurance policy behind it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen, and we'll go through an example here. So what you'll see here is we'll have a list, right, where we'll populate information. This could be around submitting a support request for a service desk. Could be in this case for procuring new IT equipment in this case, right? Where we could build out a simple SharePoint list, put in a new request as to what we're after, how much it's going to cost, the benefit to the business this is going to be, and to make sure that we can get this expensed out, right? So I might say I need a new monitor. Let's get one of those arc screen ones from Samsung. What are they, like 3,600 or something? Let's spend a bit bigger. Oops, 600. In this case, it looks like I put a budget on it. Let's put 500 in this case. Let's hit save, right? Once that's fired off, right, there can be things that we can integrate into here to really kind of get a bit more metrics behind it, right? And so this is where we talk about the Power Platform, where we can simply build up automations to then simply, right, as soon as this request goes out, and then maybe goes through and looks at who the person that submitted this request in the first place and send an email to their manager to automate that. And to, as Tom was alluding to before, right, we want to get some metrics behind to understand how many people in this particular department are making these requests, how many requests are above a certain figure, for example, right? So you can build out a lot of these things within Power Platform to really help kind of provide some more visibility around it and to automate a lot of those workflows as well. What we'll see here is we'll have one of those Power Automates set up, right, to target and send an email out to a particular approver. But here we wanted to just highlight, even though we can see that this is a workflow that has been shared with me, so I'm not even the person that originally created this workflow, we can still make changes to this, and we can also delete this on behalf of that administrator as well. We can see there's very limited metadata when it comes to the Power Platform as well. So when it comes to a cleanup, do I know, if this is a workflow that's just kind of business as usual, that's why we don't really touch or change it. It's hard to kind of perform those cleanups with what are the kind of limited information that we have. So just to show you how easy it is, right? And like we said, we're doing this in a safe space. We've got that safety net, that insurance layer, so we can go ahead and kind of blow this out of the water. So as you can see here, right, we're talking about a low-code information to build up this workflow here, where simply what it's saying here is once an item is created, right, and as I mentioned, as a citizen developer, I can completely change this, right? It's calling from this site. Oops, I might close that out. And now just from one simple change, you can obviously see that this workflow will no longer work. It's pointing at a completely different site with a list name, so it's not getting the right information here, right? But even though I'm not necessarily trained up with it, I don't really have the context behind it, how Microsoft does and works is it enables that collaboration. So you can see how easy it is to quickly make those changes, which can kind of, break some of the business workflows there. Like we said, we want to do what we said we were going to do. So let's go ahead and destroy it, right? So we'll go ahead and share with me, right? Before we go ahead with that, what we want to make sure is like, what are some of the best practices when it comes to natively? So this is kind of the expectation that's kind of out of the box, right? And so as that citizen developer, again, these are the average Joes. These are the people that aren't that have that IT process driven mindset. So what the general best practice is that if there's ever meant to be a change made to these kind of workflows, you can see here that we are meant to, or we have the ability to export these into packages. And so if we do need to revert it back, right, we can always re-upload it. As you can see, it's a bit more manual where, every time you make a subtle change, right, and communicate to the rest of the business who you share this workflow with, right, make sure you click the export, make sure you click the package option here as well, or the JSON file, just to make sure that we have a copy and bring it back. But like we said, otherwise, we'll go ahead and delete this workflow. Here, just a bit of a warning to tell you, hey, what's going to happen is everyone that's a part of this is obviously can't access this workflow anymore. And you can see here that the real warning is, as Tom alluded to, it can't be undone. There's no version history. There's no way to bring it back unless there's that export there. We'll go ahead and delete that, right? But thankfully, right, what we have here is we've got that app online services. So I wanted to showcase and highlight this screen here, where Tom alluded to various solutions that we have out of the box when it comes to both 365 backup to Dynamics 365. We expanded things like Azure VMs in Google and Salesforce, but all of it, the benefit of it being hosted as a SaaS-based product, right? We're meaning that everything is hosted within the cloud. Same goes for the storage, but really the benefit here is having it offhanded, where I, as a citizen developer, I have that insurance layer to make changes at my will without having to keep constantly remind myself to always export those packages. What we'll do now is we'll go into the backup here. And it quickly loads up. You can see the various workloads that we do support. And what we want to do is restore that back. So what we can look at here is the various workloads that we have here. and we can do a quick search based off if we know the particular workflow that we have. So you might get requests from your citizen developers, right? They might provide you some context, roughly when the last change was made, where it's located, who the owner of that workflow might be. And so they can do a bit of a search. Most of the time, I'm not sure about yourself, Tom, but I don't get too much information from those support tickets. It's more like, hey, I know it's a workflow, but now it's your problem. So you've got to sort it out. So that's why I prefer this method here.
I think, Victor, all you'd probably get is, I had it on Tuesday, but I didn't have it on Wednesday.
That's probably that's a good instance, I'd say, for sure. Here we can select any of one of those dates, and basically, right, it shows me a point in time, right? So if I know roughly when the deletion happened, right, we can go back to that particular date in time. If we're not sure, just go to the most recent date here. And then what we can see here is all the workflows created through Power Automate, and be able to pick and choose exactly what they're after, things in bulk, and export it on their behalf. The benefit here, again, like I said before, is the backups are happening autonomously. So we don't have to rely on the user to make sure, make sure you do that export. That happens automatically through this solution here. And it's more about just finding exactly what you're after. So we'll go ahead and select and choose the export. What that will do is take basically a copy of that file there, and then allow us to rehydrate it back. Luckily, we've cooked something in the past, so we don't have to wait for it to completely load out. So what we'll essentially do is, right, we can go through the import here, and you can see that there's two approaches to this, right? Currently, as we stand, we're looking at just simply supporting the legacy mode, but it's something that we're looking into the future for sure, where we're looking at as an entire entire package to import that back into. So there's something to look into the future. Now, right, once we've exported it, we can then go ahead and find where exactly it is. So I'll go to my trusty Power Platform location here, select the zip folder. And as you can imagine, with a workflow, there could be various connectors that you have set up previously, right? In this case, before we had it connected to Outlook, right, where it's sending that email. It also has a connection to our 365. You could have various other third-party applications. So that's kind of the difference between the solution versus what we're doing here through just the straight import, where with the import, you just got to reestablish those connections. But because in this instance, we're not really making any changes, we can just simply validate what is already submitted. So here in this case, it's looking at submitting for approval, setting reminders, things like that. In this case, we can see that the person that created it, and just make sure that, all these boxes are ticked if need be. You can see here, it's related to Sam. In this case, Sam might not exist anymore. In this case, because we're the ones establishing this import as the admin account, we're the ones taking over this workflow in this case as well. So depending on if there's different variables that change, if you want like for like, just mirror up to some of those variables as well. But once we're happy with that, simply go ahead and import this information, and the solution will do its thing. It'll go and we'll see eventually that that workflow will be rehydrated back into that environment there. There we go. Go ahead and open up that workflow. And we can see here, even though we've deleted it, everything's brought back to kind of what we expected there. So really, it's just that insurance layer, so that as an organization, we are comfortable with some of the tools of the trade that Microsoft does provide us in terms of the ability to export that information and making sure that that's done right without having to worry about it here. Now, the same goes for the Power BI as well, right? Where we can go into those dashboards. Here is an example, right? We have a dashboard that's pulling through various metrics. You might have an organization that is a global offices, and we want to see, through each office, what kind of information are they procuring? What assets are they purchasing? Based off that previous SharePoint list that we saw before. So here we can see again how easy it is to make changes, right? If we want to say, depending on how we want to change the layout of the view, we could, click what the layout could actually look like, right? but it could completely break the dashboard going forward for various other users here. But again, right, we can go ahead and delete this information, right? The same kind of case to the backup solution here. What we want to showcase here is, again, the autonomy around the backup solution as well. So going back into AvePoint Cloud Backup, right? Once we're looking at setting up and scanning that information, as we mentioned before, citizen developers are creating new dashboards, they're creating new workflows to really help automate the organization and streamline their business there. What we can easily see is building out containers here to automatically scan your environment and make sure that if there is a new application or there is a new workflow that has been created or modified, that is automatically uploaded into AvePoint system and ensured it's also backed up. You can create various containers as well to then separate it, right? You might say, right, based on specific naming conventions or who the owners of those workflows are, right? I might put them into different buckets so I can then provide them the capability to restore them if need be as well. A similar case, right? When we go over to the restoration process, we can go over to Power BI. Same kind of case where we can then search based off the name of the report or name of the workspace, right? You can then drop down depending on the filter level.
我不太记得那天他怎么跟我们讲的了，已经。对，我记得是本来我。
And then otherwise, we can then select from a calendar view as well, right? So again, same kind of scenario where we're not too sure whether that workspace or report was generated or created. Just select the most recent one. Here you can see, even though there's no changes made in this instance, when we select on this environment, right, you'll see all the workspaces pulled into this backup. It just takes away that guesswork of going, oh yeah, when was that workflow actually deleted? It's good to know roughly when, so you know when to select from, but most of the time you just select the most recent one. The difference here being, right, it gives you that granularity where we can then, right, we can select the entire workspace if we need to, but there might be just a particular report that we know has been changed. You give me that granularity there, we can select on that report and it'll give me different reports depending on, you know, exactly what that end user is after. Same kind of case, we export this information, right? And then it just, yeah, in this case for Power BI, it just gives us as part of a PBX file. So when we go back into Power Automate, right? Oh, sorry, Power BI, sorry. Go back to our workspaces. Oops. Push this. And we'll go to my workspace here. We can then go ahead and upload that PBX file there. Where are we? OneDrive, Power Platform. Once that's said and done, right, we can see like for like going back into its original instance, right? We can then reshare it out, but it's the majority of the content, all the content is brought back into its original state, regardless of what kind of changes have been made. So people can go back to their kind of usual day-to-day business there. What I'll do is I'll jump back into the deck there. Oops. And we want to just highlight some of those scenarios that we just walked through. As we saw before, right, we went through Power Automate and that workflow where the user created, we had a SharePoint list that was populating data into Power Automate and our Power BI workflow, right? And so what we want to make sure is that even though the best practice is to export a lot of that information so that if there's any changes that are made or someone accidentally deletes something, you have that process of recovering that back. But again, we're talking about end users that are essentially, we're given that citizen developer kind of title there, that persona, as Tom mentioned. So we want to have that safety net, that insurance layer that regardless of, even though we're giving them the keys of the kingdom, that we do have that way of bringing that information back there through something like AvePoint Cloud Backup. As you saw before, we have different timeframes and checkpoints and search criteria to identify the particular automate, and just about simply importing that back in. Alternatively, with the Next slide there, Power BI. Yeah, same kind of case, right? We ran a dashboard to showcase who those particular users were and to provide statistics to see, Jessica Jones and how many kind of requests has she made, how much is she costing the business, right? Some dashboards and analytics to help us understand our overall expenditure across the organization. And so if any changes again were made to the templates, the views, or if the report was deleted entirely, right? We wanted a way to bring that information back. So here again, with Cloud Backup, we have that capability of importing it back into the solution. So like, yeah, again, business as usual for everyone. Those key executives, they have those statistics and those reports to help you make more strategic and business decisions as well. Now, what we have expanded into is also the Power Apps as well. So just to finalize that kind of Power Platform story, right? So same kind of case with your existing backup license for Power Platform that now expands the Power Apps space, so that any citizen developers that are building applications such as like bots or chatbots, for example, that provides that automation from an end user's perspective, those key components can then also be protected and recovered if need be through the same solution as well. Now, we covered a lot today. Now, we covered a lot through from a data protection side of things, right? I think what's happening next is ways that we can help manage and govern a lot of your environment. So that's kind of the next piece of the puzzle, right? If we've got that safety net, we want to make sure that we've got that kind of that protection layer. Let's put in processes to control how our citizen developers can create those applications. How do they renew those dashboards or applications once maybe no one's touched it in quite some time? They've been playing around with it to really make sure that what's still there is business critical. So this is where my colleague Sharif and actually Tom as well will be back on stage talking about how some of the ways and methods that we can help kind of govern your Power Platform as well. So that's happening on the 30th of August. Same time.
Just going to say, just making sure you don't add the wrong connections and spread some internal data that maybe Victor and I shouldn't see.
There's also a QR code there. Again, if you wanted to go ahead and register your interest, and we'll be just going through the governance layer of that information there.
So we're opening the floor to questions and answers by everyone that's attended. Happy to take on anything. If you're not comfortable speaking out loud, please do put it in the chat. Otherwise, unmute yourself, speak up, or if you want to consume all the information that we went through. I know it was a lot. Always happy to have a conversation later on or answer any questions that you may have. But I'll leave the floor open. Looks like Victor, we may have covered absolutely everything.
So that's what we want to hear. Well, there are instances where because us from IT, we don't really have that visibility around those citizen developers, right? People have requested for a Power BI license, but apart from that, we don't really have visibility around how many things are created. We've advised that people can then look at running a trial of our solution and then scanning for any workspaces or dashboards that you might have just to get you a bit more visibility. And that can kind of help you understand, all right, how critical is the Power Platform to our organization if you're not too aware. We got a question from Sally there. Power Apps got a version restoration out of the box. What's it look like from AvePoint here? So basically, yeah, same kind of case. And this is something that we've just recently released. So we've expanded initially into the Power BI and Power Automate. We've expanded recently into the Power Apps side of things. And just to quickly show you while we're here, right? So in this case, I'm not sure if we do have any applications that we have backed up, but very similar scenario, right? So we go back into AvePoint Cloud Backup here, where we can then select our Power Apps location. Same kind of case, depending on what you're after. right? You can put in metrics around the criteria of the particular application, in what environment it is. Is it prod, dev, test? Who is the user that's got access to it? The owner of that application. Again, my personal preference is the calendar view. It just provides that pretty picture and landscape behind it. Fingers crossed we'll have some applications here. The same thing, right? We can then select a particular application, decide to export things in bulk, right? And then import it back into the tool set.
I would also add, Victor, when we're thinking of protecting data, we don't leave the data with the production data, for example, if something were to happen. It's best practice to take a copy of that, put it into a different location, which we do, which our cloud backup solution provides, and then provides, I guess, a process to restore it back into the tenant. But to truly protect your data, you would have it in another location, right? I know there's some best practices about around that, and I'd be happy to talk to you about that a little bit further as well, if you wish. Oh, we have another. Our platform, Sarah, supports. Sorry, Victor. I just started running with that one.
No, you go for it. Go for it.
Our platform. You would have seen I talked about it a little bit. The confidence platform. I put up that slide very momentarily, but we support multiple tenants with one instance of our solution.
What would happen though is, because obviously when we're exporting this data that's related to potentially your production tenancy, and then you want to re-ingest it into dev or vice versa, there'll just be some connections that you'll have to reestablish. Obviously, there'll be some components that don't exist in prod, but it does exist in dev and vice versa. You just got to reestablish those. When we saw in, like, for example, the Power Automate process, hooking it to the new owner or the new connection, there might be some things that you'll have to tweak here and there. But eventually, as we move to the solution approach, that should help rectify a lot of those things there.
And we have another, which region or which geo region is our backup data stored, Victor?
Oh, good question. So it really depends on like where your 365, if there's data sovereignty requirements around it. AvePoint, I'm not sure if, I think, yeah, you had a slide around your map there, Tom, there. It explained that, we have different regions all around the globe. For most of the, I guess, audience here based in Australia, our data can be hosted within the Australia Southeast data center there.
And it's worth mentioning for those that are Kiwis on the call that we are working on being hosting our platform in the Northern Data Center as well. In the New Zealand Northern Data Center, that is.
Now, just touching on the backups, you think about it when you're exporting data out, right? And you talk about those citizen developers. Unless it's communicated, you can imagine, okay, let's export something such as like a Power BI or a Power App, right? Where does that export go now? Is it going to be a centralized repository where you have everything stored? Unless that's communicated, end users aren't really too aware of that process. So again, this provides that single layer where everything is stored in the one location. And again, like we're saying, even though we're just focusing on the Power Platform, this can be the same solutions that you use to help you support things like your Exchange, your Teams, your SharePoint sites as well. So everything encompassing in 365, it can be all within the one platform there.
Yeah. And as a SaaS platform, we're consistently pushing out updates. I know Microsoft moves quick, but we tend to move just as quick alongside them. And so, for example, when Teams came out, we supported Microsoft Teams very quickly, and now we're working with them to, I guess, extend our support for the Power Platform too. Yeah. And for those that were curious about the geo regions, exactly what were they?
Oh, nice.
I put a picture in the chat for you. Hopefully that is sufficient. But I will share the slide deck anyway afterwards. Yeah. We'll provide some collateral for you for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Nice little care package that comes your way.
Yeah. Everyone loves some light reading of product brochures.
Especially on the weekend, right?
Yeah. Is there any other questions or otherwise, feel free to reach out. Other things, I guess, that might be worth mentioning around like security and controls of that nature. We're ISO certified, therefore we've got customers that that are very, let's say, delicate, sensitive, and we haven't had any challenges with that. But for those that are curious or may think that's a challenge, we're happy to work with you on that too.
All right, I think we've basically covered all our bases there, if that's the case.
Nice one.
Well, if there are any, questions, I know it happens all the time after the webinar, like, oh, I had my chance. Tom and Victor were all in the one meeting.
Mostly
Picked them
Victor.
both up. And then, so like, you'll always think of something afterwards, right? Feel free to reach out to our AvePoint contacts there. And yeah, we'll happily organize something like a demonstration, or like I said before, set up your own trial and just see what's there underneath the hood.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that everyone is time poor these days, so thank you for making the time to attend the session. I hope it was worthwhile, and happy to take on feedback as well. If you want to share that directly, that'd be great. I do not think so, Ian. But might see you there. We'll see. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
Yeah. See you. Bye.